Welcome this evening to the Jayhawks Tribute Show on 107.1 WHJB, sponsored by Excela Health and the Glass City. Mike Sapone and Jimmy Lee Santarella were joined by some great names from Jeannette High School football, current and past as well, and even the past is current as well, because many of them come back all the time to be a part of this program and attend games. So it's great to see the way that everybody kind of comes together still in the city of Jeannette to rally around the Jayhawk program. Of course, the reason why we're doing this tribute show is because for the second time in the history of the Jeannette football program, they are state football champions, winning back on December 7th by the score of 42-12 at Hershey Park Stadium over Homer Center to finish off a wonderful 15-1 season, and of course the 9th WPIAA championship and their second state championship, the first since the Terrell Pryor teams a decade ago. We're joined by, among others, Roy Hall, the head coach of the Jayhawks right now. We're also joined by Joe Musey, the legendary Hall of Fame head coach from the past for the Jayhawks, back to the late 60s, early 70s, and into the 80s, and also Roy Hall's former coach when Roy played for the Jeannette football program. Also joining us tonight, we have Dick Hoke, a special guest, of course, former Jeannette Jayhawk player, former Pittsburgh Steeler, former Steeler running backs coach, and really has so much of the history of the Jeannette football program that he brings with him, and so much of the background of the Jeannette program all the way back to legendary head coach Mark Lee Barnes. Also, current players joining us tonight: Trey Cunningham, Marcus Barnes, Robert Kennedy, and Jalen Jones. And, of course, we have some of our assistant coaches here from the Jayhawks as well, including Jeremy Benikonski, Ryan Ritz, and Trevor Petrillo. So, when we get started here, let's start off first by thanking everybody. We appreciate you guys being here. Congratulations. It was really fun picking you guys up in the playoffs and being able to follow that great playoff run through the WPIAA Championship and then through the state playoffs. Roy Hall, I guess I'll just start with you. And what's it been like? Can you believe it's already been over 10 days since you guys were on that field at Hershey Park?
No, I can't. I mean, actually, I was telling the guys riding up here, it hasn't always sunk in all the way yet, but the more and more you go and you hear, it's starting to sink in and everything, and it's just so surreal that it actually happened.
So take us through that day. I mean, when you get back into Jeannette, I mean, we know that when you came back from Robert Morris after the WPIAA Championship, Jeremy, you played in this program now as an assistant coach. What's that like when that bus comes back into town, particularly after a state championship?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty neat. The Jeannette police cars, the fire trucks, the ambulances, they met us up by the Turnpike exit and sort of paraded us home and through town. There was people out all through town waving and cheering. It was a neat feeling to be a part of something like that once again.
As far as the current players, let's start with you, Robert. If you want to jump in here, tell us about for you. You actually grew up watching Terrell and watching the last state championship team. So what was it like to finish it off and then to kind of see what the celebration was like when you got back home?
Just to watch Terrell Pryor in that 2017 and just to basically relive what they just went through. It's definitely an amazing feeling. It definitely hasn't sunk in at all. But it's just amazing just to be able to actually win a state title and just to do it for the city.
Did it surprise you what the reaction is when you come back to town, and when you have a chance to get to see people in town and just be around town?
Yes, it surprised me because whenever we were riding through town, there was just everybody was outside. It looked like the whole entire city was lit up, and whenever they paraded us, it was just you never expected just everybody to be outside and everybody just congratulating you still to this day.
Does it, for any of you guys that want to jump in, does it surprise you the effect that you guys can have with what you do on a football field?
No, we
see the town come together like that?
No, we just work hard all year, lifting in camp, and it just comes naturally. Just play hard.
Does it surprise you the impact that you guys can have on the younger kids and everybody else in the community?
No, it didn't really surprise me because that 2017 did the same thing that we did to the younger group, so it was just a great feeling, I guess.
When you go back, Roy, and you look at the history of this program and where it's always been, really, even back to the days you played and beyond before that, what is the common theme? I mean, I know that kids change, players change, schemes change, all those types of things. but there has to be a common thread that makes a program as successful as it is year to year to year.
Well, I would have to say it starts like when Coach Musi was the head coach, okay? And then one of his assistants was Art Traeger, which he took over. And then Art, it was Bob Murphy. And then with Bob Murphy, it was Ray Ritz. And then with Ray, it was me. It's like we kind of basically have the same type of philosophy through the years. And then all of our coaches, you know, and from Coach Cook on down, we all played together. Everybody lives in Jeannette. And I don't think there's a tighter coaching staff than what I have at the city of Jeannette. And it just like, you know, every week I hear from Coach Musi, Coach Murph. Art Traeger lives in Ohio. I hear from him, and you know, Coach Ritz it's just the tradition just keeps on going and going.
No, I have a question here. First, we just heard about your kind of tradition, what's going on. Let's go over to Coach Hoke. Back in 1956, when it was your senior year, what was it like playing under their coach, and what was the tradition like back then?
Well, Marky Barnes was the coach, and the tradition was the same as it is now. It was a little different in that back then we were in the biggest class that you could be in. We were in Double A. Double A was the biggest class you could be in, and now the kids have there hasn't been as many kids in town as there were before. But we all grew up. I had two brothers that were older than me. My one brother played, and I went to every game to watch him play. But I never watched much of it because, you know, guys know the practice field you have down there. We were all down there playing football. So, you know, I never watched much of it. That was just a way of life in Jeannette. So when you grew up, you were going to play high school football.
Now, what kind of teams did you have, like size-wise, you know, numbers?
You mean numbers-wise?
Yeah.
Our senior class had 182 kids. Now, what do you have, 58, 40. Something like that. So it's altogether different. You know, we played up, actually. We were actually a Class A school, but Coach Barnes, he played up, and we were the smallest school in the largest class. And it just so happens, my senior year, we went undefeated, and we played the next smallest school, which was Charleroi. And we played them in the championship game, and we won the WPIAL. And the thing that was different back then, the WPIAL didn't get involved in state playoffs. All you could do is go as far and win the WPIAL, and that was as far as you could go.
Yeah, see, I actually did some research on that, and I couldn't find anything, any state champions or anything, you know.
No, the WPIAL didn't take part in the playoffs in the state playoffs.
So, Dick, take us back to the 56 championship, what ended up being the championship win over Charleroi. And late in that game, you guys, you know, it was nip and tuck right till the end.
Right.
And you guys, the coaching staff had a decision to make, particularly on a fourth down late in that game. Walk us through that and just how the game eventually ended in your favor.
Well, the score was tied 13-13, and we had the ball on about their 35-yard line, and it was fourth down and 1. And we had gone for it twice, and we earlier in the game, and we didn't make it. They had a linebacker that eventually was an all-pro, Myron Patios. He was he and I were drafted together and played for the Steelers together. And Myron, he stopped me twice while we ran the quarterback sneak, and I had a 145-pound center. He just threw him right back into me. So Coach Barnes sends a substitute in and says, punt the football. And these guys are all saying to me, we're not punting. I says, we're going to punt. Because if it doesn't work, they're going to blame him, not us. So we punted the ball, and they made a mistake. They tried to go for the win, and they threw a pass, and I intercepted the pass, and I ran it back so far. And I got tackled, and there was like, I don't know, maybe 40 seconds left, and we tried a roll-out pass, and I overthrew the guy. And so, well, before that, what happened was, we had a play where, I came up to the line of scrimmage, and Myron wasn't over the center. He was back off about 8 yards. Mm-hmm. So all I did was slap the center on the butt. He centered the ball to me, and we took off up the middle. And I turned and lateraled it to a little kid, Pete Garrick, and he ran it down to about the 8-yard line. So we had one play. I rolled out and threw it over his head. And now it's like 13 seconds left, and I see the second-string quarterback come running on the field. I says, what's he doing taking me out of the game? Well, the second-string quarterback was actually the holder for the field goals, and I was a wing guy. So we kicked the field goal. Nobody ever heard of kicking field goals. Today they hear.
I was going to say there weren't soccer players coming to kick for you guys at the time.
And we kicked the field goal, and we won 16-13. And same as for these guys. When we got back to Jeannette, I mean, they had a parade at midnight or something like that, and it was great. It's a great feeling, and for you guys, you'll never forget that feeling. I played a lot of football, but I never forget that night.
Where was that game played at?
Latrobe.
Oh, is that right? Latrobe.
Latrobe Stadium, because Pitt that week had a home football game. So, and then they claimed, the bypass wasn't built around Greensburg at that time. So both teams, Jeannette and Greensburg, we met at the courthouse in Greensburg and had to turn right and go to Latrobe. Jeanette's band didn't get there until the second half because that's how many people were there.
Wow.
When you talk about that reaction, I mean, it is anymore. It's pretty rare in high school football because you have so many of the mega school districts and their townships, and out east they're half of counties and everything else. There's something special about the hometown feeling and the hometown team.
Yeah, in this area. Yeah, you have the other schools. There's a lot of schools, Clareton. A lot of those schools, they came from small towns, and a lot of them, like the city of Jeannette, a lot of the industry and everything has left the city of Jeannette, but they're hanging on to the Jeannette Jayhawks. And that same thing happens in Clareton. It's something that just pulls the town together.
Joe Musey, when you took over the program, they had a little bit of a drought since that 56 championship at the time. But you knew there was still a lot of, I guess if you would say, if you were talking about it in terms of a house, there were good bones, to it. You knew that there was an opportunity to do great things.
Yeah, when I was contacted by the Jeannette officials, and I kind of knew a little bit about Jeannette because I coached some boys up the road there from Greensburg Catholic. Yeah. And they had played for me, and they were great players. They had done real well. So contrary to what people would say, they couldn't convince me that Jeannette was dead. I figured there were people there that just had to be brought out of them. And when I took over in 68, the program was down. There's no question. I think they had won too often. But we took over in 68, and of course, we got off to a very good start. We had won our first 4 games, and of course, the biggie was the one over Hempfield. First time we had ever defeated Hempfield in the history of the school, and the people danced in the streets for 2 days.
Well, what turned out to be eventually a Hall of Fame matchup between you and Coach Abraham, of course. I mean, those were some heavyweight battles back then.
Coach Abe was a very good friend, but he was also a Jeannette alumnus. He graduated from Jeannette, and I don't think deep in his heart that was probably a very tough loss for him.
So what were some of the things that you wanted to, what were the foundations of what you wanted to build a program on?
I think the biggest thing when I approached and I met that football team when I took over in 68, I think my basic objective, we had to prove to these kids that they can win. They had been losing, and they had, and I felt there was talent in the city. If we could just motivate them and get them to believe, that was the big thing. When I went there and I met those kids for the first time, I felt my heart. These kids got it. I just got to get it out of them, and that's the way I felt. I felt very positive about the situation, and I think and I must say they were very dedicated. They worked hard. And I was tough on him. I was very tough on him, and I think I don't care on what program and what level that you coach, and I'm sure Dick will agree with this from the Steelers and all his experiences. Number one, you got to have discipline, and I was a disciplinarian, and I think anybody who played for me knew it, and I think I was fair.
Roy, do you know it?
Roy,
oh, absolutely. Well, I tell some of the kids now. Some of them might have a tough time playing for Coach Musey because there's no facial hair, no long hair, and stuff like that. I tell some of these guys, you probably have a tough time, but like now we let them listen to a little bit of music in the locker room. There was no music. It was all quiet.
The Jayhawks Tribute Show on 107.1 WHJB. Mike Sapone, Jimmy Lee Santorella, joined by a host of current and former Jeannette football players, as well as the current coaching staff, as we look back at this state championship season here with the Jeannette Jayhawks winning the state championship in Class Single A a couple of weeks ago by the score of 42-12 over Homer Center. And, of course, earlier in the season, winning the WPIAL championship, their 9th WPIAL championship over Amani Christian in a thriller finish at Robert Morris University, 35-34. The Jayhawks Tribute Show sponsored by Excela Health and the Glass City. We had a chance to look back and kind of connect the dots a little bit in our last segment, but I wanted to take a moment here in this segment and really dig down into this season. First off, when I look at this season, I look at a team that you kind of steamrolled through those first 9 games, and then all of a sudden, Clairton happened. What happened, guys, in that game, and what happened the second time around, and why were you guys able to flip the script?
I think we looked over them. Like, we didn't take that game serious because we thought since Amani beat them, we were going to beat them. But obviously that didn't happen. And then the second time, we took it more serious since we had a lot at stake. And then we just came out and did what we had to do and came out with the W.
You guys came out that second time around. There was a lot of trash talking as they took the field. There was a lot of different things going on. And it didn't seem like you guys got in the middle of much of that at all. You really stayed pretty focused the whole way through to finish the job. Jalen?
We just went down there. It was a business trip. We just took care of business. On to the next game.
That was also an opportunity, Robert, where you took over particularly defensively, and also, you guys had that long drive late in the game where you guys really put it away. What was the mentality on that final long drive to get out there and finally put that game away, and what was the feeling like to finally get over that hump? Because that was a big hump for you guys the last couple of years.
Yeah, the feeling to get over that hump was just, you really can't explain it. It's the same exact feeling as winning the WPIAL championship, or as close as that. And during that drive, we just felt like we had to, as they say, step on their throat. And that's what we did. We definitely took their hearts. And I feel like they didn't want it as bad as we did, and we just took over the game at that point.
So tell me about, Roy, when you have to get a group together and kind of regroup them after that loss. I mean, the last game of the regular season, that was very humbling. At what point did you kind of flip the switch and feel like you had everybody on the same page, and you really felt like you turned a corner after that loss?
Well, what we did was when we got our coaching staff, we got our coaches meeting, we all talked and discussed some of the things we felt that we could do, and we did it. Like at the first meeting we had, there was some things that happened, but as they said, they overlooked them. But the whole coaching staff was constantly telling them, just because they beat Imani Christian beat them, that doesn't mean nothing. So evidently they wasn't listening to us that well. But they did the next time, and they came out and they played a great game. Like I said, I was never so happy because, in the city of Jeannette, you're not used to losing too much, especially when you lose to the same team 6 times in a row. I mean, like I said, they say you got that monkey off my back, and I always say, no, it was a gorilla.
Do you feel like, did you have a challenge to kind of get everybody refocused after that game and realize, hey, we still have to win a championship, we still got another one to go? Or at that point, did you just feel like everything had come together and they were singly focused and they were going to take care of business? I
am the head coach by title, but I have the whole staff. It's not just like with Coach Hall. It's like Coach Benicossi, Coach Ritz, Coach Phillips, Coach Ty, and Coach Petrillo. We worked it as one, and we all decided, what we had to do, and we felt pretty confident. If we did the right thing, we felt pretty confident. You
go into the Amani game. Obviously, you guys knew that they could score points. Both teams scored points in that first meeting when you guys won the first game. I felt like, for the most part, you guys, particularly in the second and fourth quarters, you finished strong both halves. Even though they had the better of it in the first quarter and the third quarter, you guys always had that resiliency where you could bounce back, and you always had something else in you to bounce back from that. What stands out to you about that quality about this group? Well,
it goes back to the very first game of the year against East Allegheny. We were behind. In some years past, sometimes we were behind. Sometimes we had a tough time coming back. And, but this year's team, we have a motto, 4, 5, 6, don't quit. And there's some games we were behind, and they didn't quit. And it just sometimes when I know the fans might have thought it was, over, but these guys didn't. They believed. They just pulled it through.
Trey and Marcus, what's that feeling like when you once you get that confidence that you can bounce back and you can come back in games? what's that feeling like of that confidence level when, as a group, when you're in that situation?
It just takes our confidence to the roof, knowing that we could keep pushing and come back and win. It's you can't describe it for real.
Is it a quiet confidence, or do guys talk about it when you're down in a game and look, we have the, but we're gonna get this, we got this?
When we're down in a game, we don't get on each other's back. We tell each other, let's push through and make plays.
So it's certainly it's something that there's a leadership quality in a group of guys, isn't there? In a group of kids?
There is, because we always say, like, we don't criticize. We always, like, we motivate. You know what I mean? Try to motivate each other. If somebody makes a mistake, nobody feels as bad as that person who made the mistake, so we try to pick them up.
So tell me about the week before the Clairton game. You guys had a tough decision to make late in the Rochester game. I don't know, maybe it wasn't tough, maybe it was tough. You were making the decision. You end up making a little switch up at quarterback. And I thought, really, Robert, I thought that was, just from the outside looking in, I thought that the way that you took off from that point I thought that was really neat to see, because, you know, you could have taken that two different ways. You know, you could have gone in either direction, and you took a leadership role and just kind of took over at that point, from that point forward. Tell me about what your mentality was as you switched up a little bit, and how you approached that, and you know, the way you were able to influence others by the way that you handled that decision.
I think if you want to ask my coaches and my teammates, I think that they'll tell you I'm one of the most unselfish players. And whenever they put Seth Howard at quarterback, I wasn't like mad at all or anything. I was actually kind of happy because I could be used in different ways. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I understood like Seth Howard is really talented and one of the best players on the team. And I definitely felt that it was good because just the way he could throw, and I felt like being a diversion for other teams, because whenever I go in motion at times and stuff, there'd be like 6 or 5 guys following me, and then Seth Howard would just have an easy run in the end zone.
Mm-hmm. So it certainly made you guys even that much more dangerous down the stretch, for sure. Is that something that there's probably nothing about what he said that would surprise you guys about from what you know of him?
No, he's definitely a leader, and a bunch of people on the team look up to him, and he's just somebody you want to look up to.
Roy, you make those decisions as a coaching staff because you know something about the kids, too. You know how kids will handle it. But at the same time, until it actually happens, you don't know how somebody reacts in that situation. And it has to really please you to see the way Robert just took that leadership and just went with it from there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, you know, our co-offensive coordinator, Coach Cook and Coach Ritz, you know, we all have the phones and we're talking, and we get you an idea, what do we think you want to do, you know what I mean? Coach Ritz calls the plays, Coach Cook puts them in, and it's a team. And we always say teamwork makes your dream work, and that's what it was.
You know, I'm sorry, I was going to say, about if you talk about Robert and you look at his numbers this year and how much he helped the team. Well, passing-wise, as a quarterback, 1,462 yards, 25 touchdown passes. Rushing the ball, you know what? He had 182 attempts, 1,356 yards, 7.5 yards a carry. He hit 22 more touchdowns. He covered 47 touchdowns on that team for this year. That's just Robert.
It's an incredible number. It really is.
It is.
And, you know, I think the most impressive thing, Ryan or Coach Cook, whoever wants to jump in, is that when teams know what you're going to do and they still can't stop it.
One drive that stands out to me is a Farrell game. We got the ball in our end 20, and we went Poogie left, Poogie right. He probably carried the ball 10 times that drive. Mm-hmm. We ended up scoring on that drive. That kind of put the icing on the cake, kind of cut their throat. That's a credit to our linemen up front, too. We didn't have a lineman over 200 pounds at the end of the year. Just battle, tough, come off the ball. They weren't pancaking guys, but, you know, they did their job getting in the way, getting to second level. They did what we taught them to do.
Jalen, you had a lot of different combinations on the line, and yet you still got the same results all the time. What is it about that group that performs so well?
Just tough. Like, I've been playing for 3 years. This is the toughest line I ever played with. And it's real easy blocking for him and Seth. All you got to do is just get on somebody and they're gone.
Yeah, it was impressive to watch, especially when you guys needed to run it late in games, to watch you guys put the pedal down and get it done. You guys talked about the Farrell game, and obviously the thing that stands out in that Farrell game was the defensive performance was incredible. I mean, that team was arguably maybe, we thought going in, maybe as good an offensive team as you guys would face all season long. And to see the performance that you guys put together, Roy and Jeremy defensively, the rest of the coaching staff, what stands out to you about just that whole defensive performance and the way that you guys were able to shut Farrell down?
Well, when you look at our defensive line, like with Anthony Johnson, JJ, we had Cameron Feldbaum in there, and we had Ian Smith when we played in the 4. I mean, like we were saying, if they doubled this when this guy would be, I mean, we peaked at the right time. And I mean, Coach Benny and our staff put a great defensive game plan together, and it started in the Clarion game the second time, and we just went from there, and they just played lights out.
You guys play aggressively, and you never really changed your philosophy no matter what style of team you played against. I mean, you went with your strengths at all times.
Absolutely. Playing teams like Amani, Farrell, and Clairton, and then ended up playing a team like Homer City in the finals, we had to change a little bit because of their size and their formations they used, but we bring a lot of pressure. Our base defense is the 3-5-3 to the stack, and we have linebackers coming from everywhere on any given play, and we usually don't have a bunch of big kids we can use up front, so we usually have the 5 linebackers with speed and that are aggressive and attack, and it's done well for us. Going back to the Coach Ritz days when it started, I learned from him and still use a lot of the same stuff now.
All right, we will, as we return here, we're going to go through a little bit more of this football season and we'll point by point through some of the key moments and key games. Also, we'll continue to try to bridge the gaps between all the different eras of Jeannette football and how they all kind of come together eventually, and they eventually come to this state championship because so many people have such a piece of it for sure all throughout the history of the Jayhawk program. That's when we return on the Jayhawks Tribute Show, sponsored by Excela Health and the Glass City. Welcome back to the Jayhawks Tribute Show on 107.1 WHJB. Mike Sapone, Jimmy Lee Santarella, joined by a host of current and former Jeannette football players, as well as the current coaching staff, as we look back at this state championship season here with the Jeannette Jayhawks winning the state championship in Class Single A a couple of weeks ago by the score of 42-12 over Homer Center. And, of course, earlier in the season winning the WPIAL championship, their 9th WPIAL championship over Amani Christian in a thriller finish at Robert Morris University, 35-34. The Jayhawks Tribute Show sponsored by Excela Health and the Glass City. Dick Hoke and Joe Musey, you guys have been a part of championship teams and championship seasons at all levels. What are the common themes among those types of teams? What's common among championship teams and their makeup?
To me, I think number one is attitude. Number one, attitude starts at the beginning when we start. We ingrain this into them. Got to make sure that attitude's right. I think when I went to Jeannette in 68, I mentioned before, one of the first things that I did is had to change from a losing attitude, which I thought they had, to a winning attitude. And my job was to convince those kids that we're going to win. And you got to tell them, and they got to believe it. And it's got to come from your heart. It don't come from your mouth. It got to come from your heart. And I think we got these kids believing, where they believed in their heart and they believed in their mind that we were going to win. And nothing breeds success like success. So when you win your first game, you win your second game, you win your third game, you win your fourth game. We're number one team in the state. They believe. They really are believing. And then the rest automatically follows suit.
Dick, when you look at past championship teams you've been a part of as a coach or a player, what is that common? There's a belief, there's a mental toughness. What is it that's kind of a common theme?
I think Roy will tell you this: you have to have good players to start with.
That's the beginning part, yes.
And you have to have leaders. You have to have guys that are going to when the coach isn't around, or somebody's going to take the lead. You have to have somebody who's going to stand up and say, "This is the way it's going to be. We're going to do it this way." The coach wants it that way and things like that. You have to have leaders. And you have to go out and beat a couple of people that you maybe shouldn't have beaten. And once you do that, now you know you're on the right track.
There's always, we were talking about this the other day, just even in the NFL, and you guys would see that all the time as well. Every championship team, it's rare that you see a team that just steamrolls through everybody. There is, at some point, a point of adversity that you have to go through, whether it's a tight game, it's a game that you make a comeback that you're not expected to make. There's always something that happens in there that just kind of galvanizes everybody.
Mike, I can tell you this, and from my own experience, both as a coach and an observer, there's always a game during the course of that year, one or two games, that you find some way to win. You know, it's called luck. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what anyone tells you. If you don't have it, you don't win. And that's what it is. And I look back upon my career as a coach, when we won the championships and things, there's always that one game that we should have lost, but we won it. Mm-hmm. And that makes a difference. And I think you look through, and time will tell you that virtually happens.
There's luck, but at the same time, there's always
good players. Like I said, you have to have players, too.
You do.
The one game I remember, maybe more in the Charleroi game, is the Greensburg game. When I was a sophomore, we were undefeated. And we went up there, and they beat us. They beat us 28-24. So we go up there my senior year, and we're ahead 7-6. And it's right at the end of the third quarter. They threw a play-action pass, and a kid named Bob Meitinger got behind us, caught the ball, but he fell down on the 1-yard line. So they tried to score in 4 plays. They didn't kick a field goal. Like I said, nobody kicked field goals in. Mm-hmm. We stopped them on the 1-yard line for 4 plays. We took the ball on the 1-yard line with, I think, a minute left to go in the third quarter, took the ball all the way down the field and scored, and there was a minute and a half left in the game. We ran the ball the whole way down the field, and we ended up beating them 13-6.
There's always that.
There's always that game somewhere.
And it's always those one-possession games. I mean, the difference in any year between good and bad is usually decided in those one-possession games all the time. Somebody that steps up and makes those plays, and then some teams, it's just, it's talent in some ways. Some of it also is just a belief that's among a program or a group.
And I'd like to say about Roy and those guys, too. The X and O part, they were completely different than they were in the first game. Moving the quarterback, moving this guy around all over the field. They couldn't just say, okay, he's going to line up at quarterback. He's going to line up at quarterback. He's going to line up at wide receiver. He's going to do different things. You put a different quarterback. These guys deserve a lot of credit for that win, as well as those players.
What do you, you've coached at all levels and seen all types of players. Probably as coaches, it probably makes you feel best when you hear somebody like Robert talk about the unselfishness. I mean, you guys have probably encountered people like that all through your careers that are the difference between great teams and not, because of the way they handle certain situations.
I can truthfully tell you, Michael, that when I coached, one of the things that I emphasized, and Roy can vouch for this, that I used to teach the fact that there can be no place on our team for selfishness. It's a cancer. It'll kill us. And to me, we pounded that into their heads, and I must tell you, and Roy can admit to this, that we probably had some of the most unselfish kids that ever played the game. And I think it's a vital part of winning, because it has that positive effect. It's like this young man was talking up here before. He was so convinced that by switching him was going to be a positive thing. All players don't take it that way. Mm-hmm. I must credit him and congratulate him for that type of thinking, but I know where that was brained in his head. It came from that guy, the Black Godfather.
There you are.
Yeah, that's where it came from, because he heard it when he was part of the program. Mm-hmm. And it continued with those other boys like Charlie, and I don't know who else is here from that. I coach your dad, Ryan, we taught it, and I think we convinced them that was the way to go. And believe me, it's a big part of the team, and that's on all levels, I think.
And that goes through generations. I mean, it's kids change, technology changes, a lot changes, but in the end, is it all still pretty much the same? What motivates people and what gets to them?
these guys can testify. Just what Mr. Hope, Coach Musi said. You can ask these guys. That's what we preached all year. We started out, I'm not saying we had some selfish guys, but some things was going like this way. And we would explain to them, everybody will have their opportunity. You never know what it is. And they pulled together. And I'm never so proud of a group of guys that they did. And they just want you guys to listen. You heard what Coach Musi was saying. Did we preach that all year? It's just amazing the way, because they hear it. I mean, you can hear us tell them that, but now they're actually hearing it from Coach Musi.
The Jayhawks Tribute Show, sponsored by Excela Health in the Glass City on 107.1 WHJB. Mike Sapone, Jimmy Lee Santarella, as we recap this great, incredible state championship season by the Jeannette Jayhawk football team. 15-1, 42-12 win in the championship game at Hershey Park Stadium for the Class A state title. 35-34 win over Amani Christian. And fans really spread out all over the place. We were just talking during the break, Roy Hall, about the fact that when your games are on our air, the listenership is spread all over the Pittsburgh area. And in some ways, that's that Jayhawk Nation out there. They're all over the place. And they have that tie still, that loyalty that goes with their hometown and their hometown team, that it still pulls them back on Fridays or on Saturdays or whenever you guys are playing to check in and see what you guys are doing.
It does. I mean, you hear all the time people from all over, wanting to know what the Jayhawks are doing. I mean, where I work at, there's people that live in different areas, and they're always asking her, what's Jeannette doing? You wouldn't believe the people are asking for Jeannette shirts now. They're asking for the state championship shirts now. So.
Charles Cook, one of the assistant coaches on this team, also a former player in the Jeannette program. What does this particular team, but also this program, football program in high school, mean to this community?
It's great for the community because everybody around the community, they rally behind the team. They're always constantly asking how you're going to be this year, how your team's doing during the season. It's a great feeling being around the town.
What was your favorite? What's the moment that stands out to you most from this past season?
This past season, be the Clarendon game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about it that you take the most pride in?
Seeing the kids' faces before the game. A lot of times you can start reading into the kids, what was going to go on. And we was out there on the field warming up. You can just look at them and knew they were ready to play a football game that day.
Jeremy Benikonski, you played in this program as well. What is it about the lineage? What does it mean to be a part of the Jeannette football family?
Yeah, when I was in middle school and high school, Coach Musi was the athletic director, and Coach Cook and Coach Hall were my freshman and junior high coaches. And then Coach Ritz's dad, Ray Ritz, was my coach once I got to the high school. And those three guys are the biggest reasons I became a coach. And I mean, from the time I was in middle school, I've been with these guys ever since. Even when I went away to college, I'd come back in the summers and help out with the physical fitness program. And I just knew I always wanted to get back involved. And Coach Ritz eventually asked me if I'd help out, and this was my 13th year. So,
why do guys come back? Even whether it's just to help out, whether it's to be on the coaching staff, that happens. I mean, we see it happen with the Steelers. It happens with Penn State football. It happens with Miami Hurricanes. Yeah. Those guys come back all the time in the summers. What is it about that bond that brings people back?
It's different. I played 1AA football, and we played South Florida in front of 35,000 people, and that was not as special to me as even going back to junior high. The game I remember most my whole life was a junior high championship game. We beat Freeport for the championship, and I remember that as many as any college game. Just something about being a Jayhawk and the tightness and family.
Tell me about what's the moment that stands out to you most from this year?
I agree with Coach Cook. It's definitely the Clareton game for me. And I've always been one that believed it was a mental thing. I do think there were years when they were better than us, when they had Wade and Matthews and Dreer. But I knew for sure that we could beat them this year if the kids believed. And just flipping that switch and seeing them finally believe in themselves and make it happen was great.
Doug Phillips, assistant coach. You also had a son that played in this program. Two sons that played in this program. What is it about this program that makes you want to invest the time that you do into it?
Well, it's just, I mean, we all love being around the kids. We've known these, I've known Poggy since he was a baby. I've known these guys since they were little. I coached 20 years in the midgets. I mean, it's just a tight community. They grow up knowing each other, and it stays that way. And I think that's why they all keep coming back. I mean, they're not just teammates, they're friends.
Is there something about we're talking about the midget program and the youth football programs. Obviously, there's something to be said for it's the same group that comes up together. Is there also anything of the structure of the program that allows it to feed talent in the way that it does and keep the system going?
When I started the midgets, my first year was with Coach Cook. Mm-hmm. And I'm not from Jeannette. He taught me the Jeannette ways, him and Coach Roy's brother, Larry. And that's how you learn, that's how you taught.